This is Paranormal Borders Lab Podcast, brought to you by the Mexicali Biennial, with your host, Ed Gomez.
Today for the Paranormal Borders podcast, we have Amina Cruz. Amina is a Los Angeles-based photographer and interdisciplinary artist whose work centers on queer and trans and BIPOC communities, particularly within the brown queer punk scenes across the Americas. Raised between East Los Angeles and Tampa, Florida, Cruz discovered photography at an early age. She earned her BFA from Parsons School of Design and an MFA from UCLA. So thank you, Amina, for being part of the Paranormal Borders podcast today. We're super excited and happy to have you here. So tell me a little bit about that moment when you started experimenting with photography at 14.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm very excited. So basically, a family member left their camera at my house. And I just started taking photos, and I didn't know anything about photography, but I moved, now I know, as the aperture. Just every click, I would move it and move the shutter speed and try to figure out what it did. And then when I got the photos back, because it was film, when I was 14, I couldn't believe the difference of just a slight click and how much the photo changed from like basically a small depth of field to everything in focus. And it just really fascinated me. And then to think that you could just reproduce it over and over again. And I just started taking photos.
When did that process switch to focusing on subjects?
Well, the funny thing is I was always really shy. So I did landscapes for a very long time. And when I lived in New York for undergrad, I did like street photography. Of course, it's New York City, but I never really did portraits. I just couldn't, I was too shy, like I said. And black and white, traditional. Then one day I was literally like, your shyness is killing you. It's stunting your life. So I came up with the idea to say hello to everyone I passed walking around. And I would walk places, I wouldn't drive. And I would say hi to literally everyone I passed. And it was a nightmare in the beginning because people have such strong reactions. Some people look at you like you're crazy, and some people say good morning. Some people are terrified. So in the beginning, I took everything so personally. And then as I continued to do it, I realized it became interesting to see how people would respond. Or people who looked so shut down or just in their own world. If I, said hello, they would just pop up and be like, oh, hi, blah, blah, blah. And after a year of that, I was no longer shy. Or I'm no longer shy, and now I do portraits. And what's so interesting is if you look at the work, it changed drastically. Then I started doing more like queer punks, completely in color, very personal photos.
So when you start this process of taking portraits, do you spend time with the person you're going to be photographing, get to know them first, or is it a different process? Because I'm thinking of like Diana Davies' process, right, where there's that deep kind of investigation, time spent, getting to know the person, and then the photographs come.
For me, I spend a lot of time with myself first because I need to know what I'm doing. I feel like I can't ask people to be vulnerable or allow me to photograph them without knowing why I want to do that. And it could be a question, and that's okay. I don't need to have an answer because, right, that's part of the process is exploring, but I need to have a general idea of like, oh, I'm interested in this and I'm going to, see where this goes. But I don't just go and photograph people for the hell of it. It's a something I'm need to be okay with and understand a little bit. And then I rarely just grab someone off the street and photograph them. It started out with me photographing my community. So I would go to the same shows, events, clubs, and people would see me, and I would always bring my camera. And it's also like neighborhood parties, backyard parties. It isn't like this big downtown club. So it's truly like subculture, right? So everyone kind of knew everyone, and I would always ask, "Oh, hi, can I like take your photo?" But the thing that I loved so much is these kids came in their looks, like they're coming for a night out. And whenever I would say, "Can I take your photo?" they would always go, "Who, me?" And they were so surprised. I mean, countless times that was the response. Or like, "You want to take my picture?" And it made me happy and sad, like they look so beautiful. They're like out with their friends and having so much fun. But that like little moment of being seen by someone else and how important that is. And so then I was like, oh no, this is what I need to do. And it's just really special for me.
Would you ever share your photos with them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I ask most of the time, I ask if I can show them, if it's outside of a kind of neighborhood show, or I say, hey, now I say, if I like these photos, I might show them, or they might be published in a magazine or online survey. So I let everyone know off the bat. I try to be very transparent with my intentions.
You ever had a situation where someone's like, after the fact, hey, please take those down?
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
It's happened once, and that really was a big lesson for me. It was a photo of a brown gay man, young. I'm not sure if he's undocumented, but I think he is. And it was at a show in West Hollywood. And he never told me. He went to the opening with a bunch of friends and then confronted me.
Wow.
And the funny thing is he was shaking the whole time he was talking to me because he was so nervous. And I was like really hurt and disappointed. I was like, you could just tell me. And I could have sworn I asked him, like, can I show your photo? Because I asked everyone else in that group. And he was like, I don't want my body in West Hollywood. Like white, wealthy gays exoticize me, and I'm a fetish for them. And, his reasons were completely valid. And I took it down, I think like 2 days later. We decided we could leave it for the opening. But then he also was like, oh, did you sell it? You have to split the money with me. And I was like, I didn't sell it. And then I got mad and I was like, oh, so it would have been okay if I sold it and split it with you. And he's like, no, but if you did. And so it was a hard lesson learned. It was also, he wanted to show off for his friends and get that, like, I confronted this person. But to me, I was like, we're peers. And like, you couldn't come to me and talk to me about this. You had to like bring everyone and like make a production out of it. But then the real important thing I learned is that I had agency for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I never had, and I didn't understand that, right? And I still saw myself as an outsider. So when that happened, I was like, oh, wait, there's a weird power dynamic in this. It isn't just me taking pictures of people I know in my community. Something else is going on. So then I had to like step back and really spend time again with myself and say, now what's next? How do you morally manage this area of your life? And now it's kind of a career. And so, it was a hard lesson, but I'm very happy that, I figured it out.
And is this still an ongoing, process, going out to these communities and documenting them and photographing them?
Yeah, I feel like that it's literally going to be a forever process for me. I never actually say process. I know it's a little played out, but I do say exploration because that's what it always is. For me, if I say process, that means there's a solution, period. And who am I to say, oh, this is the answer to this? But I like the the other has curiosity in it, right? And it can be ongoing because things change and I change and people change and different scenes change.
How have they changed? Have you noticed that? Like, are there themes or looks or aesthetics that are constantly changing?
Well, the reason I was so excited to photograph like queer kids, brown kids in Los Angeles is exactly that. There's so many cultures that interweave, and it's beautiful. And I'm like obsessed with that, right? So many influences. There's like Southern California just in general, and then there's like a Mexican, but also sometimes if they're like second generation, there's like this specific Chicano, East LA look. Then there's like a traditional punk look, but it blends, and that's what I love. I love when people blend all of those together and come up with their aesthetic. It's my favorite, and so that's a big part of it. It's not just like, oh, aesthetic, this is the way you look, but it's that blend of culture.
Yeah, I remember a while back, it was about, for me, it was like looking at tribal, which was that merger of the indigenous with the,
Yes.
the more of the contemporary sounds. And then now it's like goth cumbias.
Yes, I love them. I love it.
Have you had a chance to see experience any
I
of
haven't
them,
I haven't been able to go to a show, but I love it.
that mixing and
Yeah.
like almost culture bringing these different cultures together, and generations too, where they start to merge in
Yes.
older and younger generations.
And that's what I love about Mexico, like the Efe. If you go to a show there, it's like everyone's there. Generations are there. And there are a lot of older punks that still go, where I feel like sometimes here it can be like, oh, you're going through a trend or a stage or this. And, but they're everyone, and they'll bring their children, their grandkids, like everyone's at the punk show. And I love it.
That's cool. And you also do landscape work too.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved in landscapes?
Like I said earlier, I was just so shy. And also, I think now that we're talking about it, I think a really big influence was that when I was young, I lived in East LA, but I went to school in South Pasadena. And we would drive. Either my mom would drive me, my grandpa would pick me up, but we would take the freeways, and I would always look out the window and see how the landscape changed, and I found that so interesting. And then I also lived in Los Angeles and then moved to Florida, to Tampa, Florida, and the landscape changing drastically. So it's something that's always, kind of been in my mind and affects my daily life in a way, how I register oh, okay, this kind of environment means this when I was younger, and this means this. And, when the train tracks start coming or when this changes, we're almost home. And it's, all these markers for me.
And then you're also doing cyanotype work too.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Because you explained briefly the process where it's time consuming, it's laborious. There's bleaching and staining and involved. How did that whole project evolve?
Well, I really love the blue, and I'm always thinking of photography and what else can be done with it than traditional work, like straight prints, which I love, don't get me wrong, and I think people need to have more of an appreciation for that, which is I can talk about forever. But I was curious, what else can this be? What else can I do with this? And so, of course, I want to look in the beginnings, right? The beginnings of photography, and how did that come about? And so, cyanotype, gum dichromate. So I started playing with those, and I loved the cyanotype. It was just fantastical. And I started printing large scale, 42 by 62, which you could actually kind of only do today with a digital negative. Because, back in the day, you'd have 8 by 10, 5 by 7. And they just seemed, I used landscape, and it just seemed like this other world that was like right below the surface of where we live, and this other possibility. And I really wanted to tap into that.
And it's a different process, right? Because you, in a way, you have to start out either with objects or a transparency of an actual digital photograph that then gets printed on a transparent sheet in order to imprint into the, like, how does that work?
Well, for me, it's either digital, or sometimes I even use film and just scan it and make a larger, digital transparent negative transparency. And you coat the paper. But I love that it's so hands-on. Like sometimes, digital photography with like post-production, it's just, for me, it feels far away, and I need to spend time with my images. And I tell my students that a lot. You need to spend time with your work, get to know it, let it talk to you. So I feel with the cyanotype that happens, because I like hand cut the watercolor paper I use. I hand coat each sheet. I let it dry, then take it out in the sun. And because the images are so large, I need help with it. And it's like heavy because you have like a piece of wood and plexiglass and clamps. And then, of course, what I love also about it, right, is like you have to give up control at a certain point. It needs UV rays, the sun, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And I like that part. I have to give up some type of control. And then, the work that I've shown recently, I toned it. So I bleached it, toned it in black tea and coffee, bleached it again, toned it again. So it's like a day's process.
Why do that versus keeping it the blue tint?
It's again referencing kind of like the other world, the other dimension, another life that's right next to us. So going even deeper, I feel like, right, the first layers, like recognizing it, then like the cyanotype, and then changing that same landscape of a cyanotype to look drastically different. So I really tone them so they become almost black and brown with a hint of the cyan color. And it's just all the layers in there.
How do you know when to stop and when it goes bad?
Well, when it goes bad is when you can't see anything. And when I stop, I just get a feeling in my chest. And that's also how I edit my images. I just get a feeling in my chest, and I'm like, okay, it's now. And I listen to it, and that's it.
I think that's a fascinating process, because I've talked with other photographers before, and they'll show me their contact sheets, right? And there'll be like hundreds and hundreds of photographs, and then they'll be like circling one, right? Like, how do you get to that point, right? Like, what is it? Like you were saying, a feeling? Is it just?
It is a feeling, but I think, and this makes me actually very happy to say, it's all the work I've put in, right? All the years of like years of working in my craft. It's second nature, and that's what I've always wanted. I remember some of my teachers or mentors, the same thing. I would just be like, how do you know that? It would take like all my brain power to figure out how to make this image look a certain way, and they're just like, filter this and time this and blah 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 blah, and it would blow my mind. Or really, right, when I was doing color photography and printing, really seeing color, and like I said, it's just time and concentration, and it's not something that is quick. You just have to truly put in the work, and I think that takes years.
And then definitely a different process between digital photography, analog photography, and even with your cyanotypes, right? That feeling of when it is done. And
Yeah. Well, I know how to shoot, right? Because I learned on film. So I take the way I've learned how to shoot film and my personal process into digital. So I think that helps a lot. I don't rush it. You know, I think a lot of people, I've heard one photographer say she was on a shoot and she took like 1,000 photos and she was so happy and everyone was like, oh my God. And I was like, I would quit. If it took me 1,000 photos to get something, I would quit. That's not a flex for me, you know? It's, so I don't work like that. I don't have just the shutter on and it clicks, click, click, click. I really look and see and feel and what is it here and what's important to me. But I've also learned from when I first started photography is to take a picture of whatever I'm drawn to, and I don't need the reason yet. The reason can come in the editing or, you know, so that's how I started. What am I drawn to? And I don't know why yet, but I'm just going to take this photo.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of that way too, because I started with film, right? And so you'd have to pay money to buy film. Then you pay money to get it developed. And then you're like, it goes wrong. And then you have to start the whole process again.
Yeah.
So for me, like taking photographs at some point was like, how much money can I spend? Right. Whereas digital now, where you could like take a video and just out of the video clip, like select one still. It's a completely different process. How do you feel about artists using AI to create their photographs?
I mean, of course I don't like it, but that's their business. You know, like I've trained myself and other people have literally trained me. I had this one master printer I studied under. He's Japanese, super old school. And I went to his studio. He turned off the lights, turned on a tiny little flashlight and pointed it at different objects and said, study the light. Look at the way the light, where's the highlight? Where does it start the midtones, the shadows? How does it wrap around this object? For 2 hours, that's what we did. And then he gave me a camera, has no focus, no light meter. And I shot with that for like 5 years. And he had me stand in the middle, had a 10-foot string. He had me hold it. He walked around me and goes, this is 10 feet, memorize it. This is 10 feet, memorize it. So that I could use that camera to figure out, you know, distance. So I'm proud of all of that. And some people may say that's excessive, and it is a little bit. He's very old school, but there's also a confidence that comes with it.
Where was this? Was it in Parsons or?
No, actually, he hates Parsons. Oh. I told him like, oh, I went to Parsons and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, then you don't know anything about photography. And he was kind of right. So I actually met him in Los Angeles. I moved to a new apartment and took a wrong turn and found this like half closed building, and it had a photo studio in it. And I called, I'm not even exaggerating, every day for 3 months, and no one answered. Wow. And because I had a bag full of film I wanted to develop, and I couldn't afford to send it somewhere. And I also have never sent my film anywhere. So I just kept calling, and it would just get a voicemail, and then the voicemail would hang up. It wouldn't even let you leave a message. So then I forgot about it, saw my all my film again, called again, no answer. I called the building next to him, and they go, oh yeah, they're there. I'll go tell him to answer the phone. So he went, told him, I called, he answered. And I told him like, oh, I went to Parsons. I have a bachelor's. I just need to develop my film. Like, do you do that there? And he was just like, yeah, you don't know anything about photography. We don't do that. This is a school, blah, 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 blah. Wow. And he like basically insulted me for 15 minutes. And then at the end, I said, okay, can I come develop my film? Like, I didn't care. I just wanted to develop this film. And he goes, well, come Wednesday, and you could sit in the corner and watch everything and see if it's something you like. So I went Wednesday. And then he's like, come Tuesday, bring a notebook. So I did everything he told me to do for a year. And I didn't even know if I was accepted or not. I just kept coming and kept coming. And then he finally like gave me a roll of film and was like, okay, go shoot this.
That was his way of testing you, right? You passed all the tests
in
order to like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a instructor that way in college. He would always train his students to be illustrators because being an artist was terrible, horrible, sketchy prospect, right? And so he would really guide everyone towards design and illustration. And then if you really wanted to do fine art after that, he'd be like, all right, let's do fine art. Like it was that you passed the test. I know how serious you are. Let's go ahead and move forward with this. Where did this person learn that training?
In Japan, he was actually an R&D person for like a camera company and film company in Japan. So he can get down like on serious technical, like he even taught me how to hold the camera. He's like, the camera is built so that you hold it this way. Like it, like so many little details, but I really like it because everything is kind of like that. Everything has its own language. You know, even when you like fold and tear paper, it needs to be done a certain way. You can do it any way you want, but you might get like, it's not going to be perfect. But if you work with the paper the way it's made to work with, it's kind of amazing. And so he showed me like all these little, I think of it as magical. He doesn't. He's very like, it's not magic. He's like, it's science. It's made this way.
So that was really geared towards traditional film photography,
yeah,
right?
Only film. He knows nothing. He always says, I don't know anything about digital. He hates digital. He's not interested.
How much of that can you apply with digital photography?
Well, for me, like I said, first, I know how to shoot. I know my lighting. I know, some technical aspects to photography. So if I shoot digital, I don't spend 20,000 hours doing post because it's shot properly. Or if I do, I shoot it a little bit under so I can bump the contrast. And that's all I do in post. I don't do crazy stuff. So I think all of that, I learned that with analog.
Yeah, for me, the big difference is learning how to use the rectangle in a horizontal format, and now with cell phones, like everything's vertical, or now everything's a square, right? You have to rethink framing and compositions and all that. And the fact that now everyone's an artist, right? Because they all have a camera, but it may be the term now is what lens-based artist, right? So your cell phone can do both video and then it also can do still photography. How much of your cell phone do you actually use in your practice?
I actually, to be honest, I started using it a lot just because I would always carry a camera, and now I have my phone, but I also don't rely on it too much. Like I still, like right now, summer's coming. I bought a bunch of film. I'm breaking out my old 35, and I always have to kind of do that. Back to basics, so I don't forget my training. I don't want to forget that. I've worked hard. I've been through a lot with that training, sitting in the dark looking at like a tiny little flashlight. So, but it's like a double-edged sword. I've always loved photography because people have access to it. Or they're not as intimidated as if you tell someone to paint something. But then people don't know what a good photograph is, or there's always that kind of discussion around fine art versus editorial work.
We did a project a few years ago. We did some research at the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History, and we went through their archives, and we found a brochure and instructional manual for a tanning company that would tan cowhides. And we were going through these pamphlets, and I was looking at these photographs, and they were like really beautiful. But it would just be like a worker working on a piece of cowhide, a worker next to a vat and a chemical bath. And I was looking at all these photographs, and like, these are really nice. And I was seduced by like their contrast and their composition. And I'm like, this is just an instructional manual.
Right.
And they're like, Ansel Adams shot these. I'm like, wow. Right? Like that translated into something even that was just something really like didactic.
Yeah.
Right? And there's that difference between not only being able to compose the picture, shoot the picture, but then also develop and print it, right? Mm-hmm. How do you balance that? Like, or did your training also include developing the film?
Absolutely. You can't do one without the other. The way I was taught. It's a triangle, right? There's like exposure, development, print, and it all connects, and you can't have one without the other. So he taught me how to properly expose film, right? Like shoot meter for the shadows, develop for the highlights. So that, and then into printing. And that was the other thing that I think translates well into digital is seeing color, knowing when an image is properly printed. I've noticed a lot of people, younger people, or people who learned on digital don't have that acute color eye. Because, right, they see it on the monitor or LED screens, but they don't know how to get it. They think it's going to look, oh, yeah, but it looks so good here. And I'm like, well, this is a whole other process. There's no light behind it.
Right.
You know, so understanding that and just, color correction. Like, there's too much cyan. There's a little bit too much yellow. Like, a lot of people don't understand that.
So you did your BFA in UCLA, or
At
was
Parsons.
it at Parsons, and then you came back to do your master's work at UCLA. What was that like?
UCLA.
Yeah.
For me, because I was older, I was out of school for like over 10 years. So for me, my experience, I think, was a lot different than my cohort. It was a blast. I had access to like some of the best equipment and equipment that have just come out. And so I just played, I just completely played. But I've been doing photography for a while, but what grad school gave me was a different type of confidence in the work. I was always like, I don't know if I'm good. I don't know if I'm good enough, even though now I can say, what does that even mean, good enough? But at the time, I just was like, I don't know. And there was always this hesitation. And now I can say, oh, this is my work. And I understand how to talk about it, not ego or academic way, because that is definitely not who I am. But I understand it more. And now I love it. It's like I have to do it. And I think I really understood that going to grad school.
UCLA happened after you grew up in Florida?
Mm-hmm. So we moved to Florida, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. So I spent that time in high school. So like those formative social years, all of that was in Florida. And that also, right, affects my photography of being one of the only like brown punks there. I was always around white people. I was socialized by white people, white culture.
This was in the 90s or?
Mm-hmm. Late 90s. And then coming here and seeing like, oh my God, this whole other world that I dreamt of when I was younger exists. That's amazing. And kind of what we talked about is like what has changed. For me, like that has changed a lot. Punk was always white or referencing like London and those aesthetics. But that's why I'm also really interested in the work I do now is like the layering of aesthetics and culture.
Yeah, the mixing and matching of the Chicano, Cholo,
Yeah.
Raza, Paisa.
I love it.
Yeah. And then part of this podcast is also not only getting artists and creatives to help us identify or talk about what normal is as a way of also helping us define what paranormal is. So have you ever had a paranormal experience?
I've had so many.
All right, let's get into it.
I've been thinking like, which one do we even talk about? There's literally my whole life, though I have to admit it has stopped, hasn't been so strong now, but especially when I was like 16, 15.
Where was this, in LA?
This was in Florida.
Florida.
Mm-hmm. The things in LA have definitely happened too, but I think I was just really open then. I was always searching for something. I wasn't satisfied in Florida. I hated living there. And my mom and father still live there, and I don't go there to visit them. I'm like, if you want to visit me, you have to come here. It was just a horrible experience. And so I was always felt like something was missing. And I think I was just open to whatever. I knew something more was waiting for me. And I think that it tapped into like the supernatural a little bit. And, I've seen shadows on my wall, like shadow people, maybe 2 inches from my wall, just moving along. I was terrified. I was just laying in bed
at
16?
night.
Mm-hmm. That was terrifying because it was that's one of the first things I remember happening, other than being really young. I would do weird stuff. One of my aunt's favorite stories, we were walking downtown, and she was watching me, and I was making crazy faces. And then I smiled, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I made that man trip." She was like, "I thought it in my mind, and I made him trip."
And he tripped.
Yeah, and he tripped.
He had the gift. So you had to learn how to harness that gift.
Tripping people was my, yeah.
But
like,
you get them to pay you money, or you like give them you get your free car or something.
Totally. So like that, I started young, like literally. I was think 5 or 6.
And how did you realize that? What was that thought process like? Were you completely aware that you were making this person trip, or was it a game that you were playing in your mind?
No,
or...
I was focused. I remember I was like, I want him to trip. And I was like sending tripping vibes out to him. And then he tripped.
Your Jedi powers.
Yeah. And then I was like so proud of myself.
And so did this continue? Like you can kept doing this, or?
I don't really remember, to be honest, until I was 16 with the shadow people. And then so much happened in that house. And it's crazy because it was a brand new structure, but maybe the land, or maybe it was that time in my life. And probably the biggest thing that happened is I was sleeping, and I would, when you get into that paralyzed state, so I couldn't wake up or I couldn't move. And a mirror is right in front of me, like my cajones in the mirror. And I remember looking in it, and a man popped out. Oh, but before that, I could hear a million conversations. That's what woke me up. I could hear 40, 50, 60 people talking all at once. And I was trying to hold on to one conversation. And then I looked, and the man popped in my mirror and was like, "Hello, blah, blah, blah." And I was just like, what?
What did he look like?
He was actually very cute. He had dark hair, like almost black hair, and it was kind of buzzed, but grown out a little bit. White, black t-shirt. I don't remember the details of his face. I just remember thinking he was really cute. And then he left. And I was just like, what is going on?
So he said hi, and then...
Yeah, he just said a few words, but I didn't feel unsafe. I felt safe. But then it happened again, a week or 2 later, paralyzed state. This time it was terrifying, terrifying. I couldn't move, and I was shaking so hard because I was trying to move. And I remember looking to my left, and there was a man sitting on the edge of my bed towards my feet, just staring at me. He had a black hat, super wrinkled, a black button-down shirt. And I remember I started to feel in my chest fear, true fear. And I didn't know what to do. And I felt like I was screaming in my head because I was so afraid. And then I realized, oh, he's feeding off of your bad feelings. You have to calm yourself down and he'll go away. And that's exactly what happened. It was a struggle, but I finally calmed myself down. And I remember shooting up in the air. I just shot up off my bed because I was just shaking and trying to move so hard. And then I had insomnia for years after that because it was such a horrible feeling. I didn't want to sleep. And I think my mind was just like, okay, we won't sleep. And I had horrible insomnia.
And this figure that you saw, do you feel like they were aware that you were there, or you just happened to catch them sitting?
No, they definitely knew. He was staring right. We were
Staring
staring at each other. Yeah.
And this is all in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Has it happened since?
Different things have happened. Not the paralyzed. Actually, paralyzed sleeping did happen. Happened when, here. Someone was trying to get into. I was asleep on a friend's couch, and someone was trying to get in the room, into the apartment, and this woman stopped him. But I knew it was bad, and I was shaking again, and I could hear her voice telling him like he wasn't allowed in there, and he didn't have permission to go in there, and he needed to leave. And that was, yeah. And they were just like, not screaming, arguing, but just going kind of back and forth. And finally he left, and I fell back to sleep.
How do you explain all this?
I don't really. I'm not interested in explaining it. Like, I know other things exist. There's no way we are the only beings in this universe, spiritually. There's no way. That's insane, I think, to think that. And so sometimes we just tap into, like, the other dimensions, the spirits, unfortunately, sometimes demons, or however you want to say it.
Yeah, energies.
Yeah, different energies. So, but I'm like, honestly, I don't have the answer. I don't know where they come from. I know it's real. And what I'm actually find most interesting is that I knew what to do. It was already in me, right? Like when that man was sitting on my bed, somehow something in my brain, in my soul said, calm down. He's feeding off of this. And so that's what I did. And when I saw those shadow people, I imagined a white light moving throughout my body and then exploding, and they totally went away. But I just knew how to do that. I knew to do that.
Now, the shadow people, were they in your peripheral vision, or were you able to look at them directly?
No, look at them directly. It started here, for sure. And it's always like when I'm trying to fall asleep, or that kind of in-between state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So, those are my experiences, some of them.
Awesome. Well, we're really thankful for having you on this and sharing your stories and learning more about your art and your art practice.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
So my website is aminacruz.com, IG aminacruz.studio. I'll be in the Getty.
Yay.
June 16th is the opening. I think a queer lens. I'm interested in this because it's the whole history, or they're kind of building the history of queer photographers. So that's going to be wonderful. Like the beginning, like late 1800s to present day, which is great because we really need that now. And it's like couples, drag queens before they were, had the name of drag queens photographed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
What advice would you give to a young artist interested in photography?
Don't be lazy. And don't give up. Like, you're not going to get it right the first time at all. And it doesn't mean, I feel like young people, because I teach photography, they want to like immediately be perfect. And that doesn't happen, So definitely don't give up. And you just have to like keep going. It'll click. Eventually it just clicks in your head. And yeah, you make the work you want.
Awesome. Thank you for being part of the Paranormal Borders podcast.
Thank you.